Hey guys, it's Will with Adventures in Anime. We have reached our 10th video on the channel. That's exciting. Double digits. We did it. Cha-ching! If you're a big anime nerd or geek or however you want to define yourself, it would be a huge help to me if you subscribed, because if you don't know, this channel is me going through the history of anime, watching all these things I've never watched before. And friends of mine who are big anime fans and other people who have seen these videos, like people on Instagram who have reached out to me and stuff, have pointed me in the direction of what I should be watching, and that has been a huge help. So if you're a big-time anime fan, you should subscribe, and you should let me know in the comments what I should be watching. Today we are talking about DALLOS. This was released from December 16th of 1983 through August of 1984. So it's a 4-part series, and it is an OVA. OVA stands for Original Video Animation, and so that means that it was released directly on home video format. It was never put in theaters, it was never put on TV, and it would have been VHS, because this was the early 1980s, right? So this was actually the first ever OVA released. And because of that, it is obviously of very large historical importance, and oftentimes the historical importance, I think, overshadows just how damn good this series is. Because I read a fair amount about the history of this series before I even watched it, because I had watched other stuff by the people involved in this. So the people involved in this are the creator is, these are all of my notes just for this series. I took a lot. So I'm going to try to keep this video short, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to. It was created by Hisayuki Toriumi, who he directed Lilliputian, which I have also done on this show. He directed Space Ninja Gatchaman, I think it's called, something like that, which is like a pretty well-known anime from what I understand. Again, I'm all coming to this all new, so I only know like the really, really big names like Akira and Ghost in the Shell and like stuff like that. Speaking of Ghost in the Shell, the co-director on this was Mamoru Ishii, who directed Ghost in the Shell, which I found out today, actually doing a little bit of research, was the first ever direct-to-video anime to top the Billboard charts in the United States when it came out here in 1996. So there you go. That's a fun little fact for you. He also directed Only You. That was his directorial debut. I don't know much about that movie, but I have read about it, and I've heard that's like very kind of like weird and psychedelic and was kind of groundbreaking at the time that it came out. And then he also directed Angel's Egg, which I have, but I have not yet watched, so that will be featured in an upcoming episode of this show. So, like I said, there's a lot to say about this, and like I said, I think that the historical importance of this has often overshadowed how good it is, because I have read several times like people saying, it's like not very great sci-fi, and it's like kind of like a mediocre entertainment, but it's not that interesting, and it's really more well known because it was the first ever OVA, and I completely disagree with that. So what this is looking at is there's a colony of people on the moon, and you have people who are like in charge of the moon. This is like way in the future, right? And these people have been sent to the moon so that the Earth can continue to be prosperous, because they need to go to the moon to mine the substance that's on the moon that can contribute to the prosperity of Earth. And it also helps get people off the Earth, so it helps solve like overpopulation, right? So you have this aristocratic class that is controlling the moon, basically as like the bureaucrats, but then you have these people who are like the miners and the workers on the moon and stuff like that, right? And they are the bureaucratic class is reporting directly to Earth. And then the rebellion starts from the miners. And so basically the setup is that the miners were told, you will go to the moon and you will help us with this. And then quality of life on Earth will improve. And then we will be able to improve your quality of life. And people will be able to come back to the Earth. And like, we'll send other miners out there, and it'll become this kind of like, everyone will go and do their term, and then people will come back and stuff like that. And that never happened. And so these people on the moon have been there for generations, right? And so just in that, it's looking at this really fascinating thing of like the diaspora and deracination and like cultural memory. Because there's a lot of stuff on here about people who like, have never been to the Earth or don't remember the Earth, or like, and they almost like, it's almost like they worship the Earth, not like in a religious way, but like the Earth is their source, and they want to return to their source, and they feel completely cut off from everything that is true to their identity while they were on the moon, and they want to go home, and they can see the Earth because it's so huge in the sky, right? But they can't ever get there. And that there's a lot of existential stuff in this that ties into the physical stuff that's happening. Another one is the disposal of bodies. So because they're on the moon, they don't bury bodies, they chemically dispose of them. And the way that they show that happening is it's very much this thing of like a complete obliteration of the person. And so you never were. As soon as you're gone, and it's almost like you never existed. And what is the point of anything, right? And that's kind of like a central question here too. So there's a lot of existential stuff in here, like I said, that I find really fascinating. The other thing that I found really, really fascinating and fantastic about this is the way that it approaches political violence, basically. Because, like I said, there's a rebellion, right? So you have these people on the moon. Basically, the people on the moon want to get the attention of people on Earth, because they want people on Earth to put political pressure on the bureaucrats on the moon so that they can get what they want. They can improve their conditions of life on the moon, and they may also be able to return to Earth, right? And so you have this very much this situation that's like a lot of situations that you see historically where people use violence to get attention, right? And to make a point, because they can't see any other way to do that, right? So if you look at like Northern Ireland, right, and with the Catholics there, and you read the history of how the Provost and Sinn Féin and all those things came into being, it's very, very similar. And also, like a film reference point would be Battle of Algiers, which was actually a big influence on this movie. So if you're familiar with that, you'll kind of get what I'm talking about. But it has this very subtle and intelligent and compassionate way of looking at this, so that essentially you see this system where a group of very powerful people controls the media narrative. And this other group of people know that they can try to seize that media narrative, but their window is so small. And they talk about, like, the characters are actually talking about the efficacy of protracted violent conflict. And they're like, this can't keep going. Like, we're failing to grab the attention of the people on Earth. So what's going to happen to the rebellion? Like, there are actually people in the rebellion having these conversations about the efficacy of what they're doing and the way that they're trying to use violence briefly to get attention for political power, so that they can have a better life. And they know that can't last forever, that moment that they seize. And it's a really intelligent way to look at that I've never seen. Like, I've read a lot about what everything that happened in Northern Ireland and other kind of areas where you have these conflicts divided by factions and like that are tied into these historical things, and where you have one group controlling the narrative and the other group trying to break into that, right? And so this I've never seen another movie, or I guess it's not a movie, it's a series, but I've never seen another kind of filmed thing, if you want to call it that, like an animation, a movie, a series, or whatever, that deals with that perspective and aspect of political violence with such subtlety and such kind of looking at both sides of it. I guess kind of like, it's not really objectivity, but it's a sense of like trying to understand why everyone is doing what they're doing, rather than being like hero villain, like you have in Star Wars, right? So Star Wars is the same thing. They're trying to use violence for political means because they want to overthrow the Empire. And in Star Wars, it's this very black and, I mean, it's so literally black and white that the bad guys are black and white, right? Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers. It's just very, very different. So the other thing that's really interesting about this, and I think it makes it very, very timely, is the fact that it is essentially about extremely wealthy people who are using people who aren't wealthy to make themselves more and more wealthy, and keep telling the poor people and the workers that they're taking advantage of, tomorrow will be better for you. Tomorrow will be better for you. I will, my wealth will increase, and then I will share that back to you, and then you can come back to Earth. And these are all lies, right? And we see that happening now, of like people have reached a point in the United States at which you have, obviously this is like really in the news, so I don't need to talk about it a lot, but you have all these uber wealthy people, and then all these other people who are really, really struggling to get by, and it is reaching the point at which it's like there is going to be a breaking point if we don't rectify this in a legitimate way, right? And this looks at that in a way that's really, I mean, honestly, it's, so maybe a little bit of a spoiler alert here if you haven't seen this. It's really bleak. And the final shot is just like devastating. The final shot in the series. And it's basically like, it's looking at like, the entrenched state versus the rebels. And it's looking at basically the uber wealthy and the disenfranchised. And I actually wrote down a couple of things here. Economic oppression, deracination, the diaspora, like I said, with all of that stuff. And it's really, really bleak. in the end. So that's not, I mean, this really appealed to me, like just I'm interested in things about conflict. I'm interested in things that look at these subtleties and things that are maybe a little bit less like Star Wars, you know, in that like, hoorah, we're going to go beat the bad guy kind of way. The music is great in this. These are just like some other random notes. If this was obviously of an influence on The Matrix. The only reason I say that, I mean, there are other reasons that you can delve into, but the main reason is there's like a huge bullet fetish in this, where you see those slow motion shots of just like bullets and bullets and bullets raining down. That's like The Matrix to a T. Like it so clearly was an influence on that. The writing is really, really good, because what it does is it basically, with each new scene and sequence, in the opening, as the world is expanding, right? You're introduced to one part of the world, and then it expands, and you meet more characters and more. You see more kind of factions in the world, and then it expands again and again and again. It just keeps going out, but it always reminds you of those first people you met. So it's this like, it's basically like perfect TV writing, because that's what you want with TV writing, right? Like every episode, you want a new. You want like a new event or a new mystery or a new complication to the plot, while you meet new characters, while you learn more and more about the world, while you keep driving forward with the first thing that hooked you with the show, right? And this is like fantastic. It's like great writing, and you can tell that the writers in this come from a place of like, they're used to like, you know, like writing manga, writing episodic stuff. Like they're used to grabbing the audience and then stringing them along throughout episodes, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of other stuff I could talk about here. I wrote down a quote. Everyone wishes for peace, wishes for understanding. While knowing justice and ideals are not enough compensation for their sacrifices, why do young people still think of tomorrow's battles? We gained nothing and nothing has changed is another quote from the show. So that is DALLOS. It is the first ever original video animation released in 1983. This is Adventures in Anime. My name is Will. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you so much. I'm trying to do the emoji, which someone told me is a high five. It's not like someone begging someone or thanking someone. So I don't know. Tell me in the comments what you think that is. We'll see you next time.